Okay, so let's jump in since we didn't get very far last class. Good conversation, but let's make some progress now. Uh, Loading controls. Okay, so we are working on our prefab for our hit points and things like that. We got it hooked up. We designed it in a different scene before. So right now we have it attached to both of these game objects, and I think we have it just kind of randomly counting down just to prove movement, that type of thing. So let me just see that here real quick. Um, yeah, so they're counting down. So now what we want to do is we want to probably have them positioned a little bit better as well. But outside of that, we want to go ahead and get them associated with the actual hit points from the game objects that they're attached to. And we want to think about how we can accomplish that. And this is going to actually be a good discussion related to use of singletons versus doing something else. So let's dive into that. Let me hide this, hide this, hide this. Okay. So if I click on my monster right here, we see that the uh, actually, yeah, the hit point bar right here. Who has the All right, we have our controller, hit point bar controller. I'm just going back to see who has what stuff. So the fight scene manager knows about the player and the monster. Our monster each has the hit bar. Let me go to my prefabs. Here's our hit bar. Okay, so we haven't written a script for our hit bar yet. Seems like we have our game controller, but we haven't written something that's. Oh wait, here's our hit bar controller script. So let me go find that. H bar controller script right here. Okay, so this is the guy currently governing it, where we're having it do its move and where it's going to be positioned. So this is what we messed with last time, where every half second we reduce the position, but we also need to nudge it over with local position to make sure it's always left justified. Otherwise, it kind of shrunk in the middle. So really what we need to know here with our hit bar controller is who is this representing in terms of hit points or whatever. So we have to have a way of this mono behavior script, which is attached to go back here, attached to the HP bar itself. So the far down part in this thing. It needs to know who is it managing the hit points for. Um, so how do we maybe accomplish that? We know, at least in our current world, that every single fight is going to be between a monster and our player. So this could be as easy as just putting in a uh, a Boolean, is this player? Something like that. We know we're keeping track of player as well as the monster. I think we have the monster up on our singleton. If not, he's going to be moving there, or at least his hit points are going to be moving there. So if it's not the player, we know it's the monster. So that'd be a fairly simple way of accomplishing this. This is one of those examples where we could probably pick 50 different ways of coming up with this, including, we're not going to do it for this one, but there is a mechanism. At some point, we'll have an example where we look at this, but there's a mechanism in Unity where you can effectively send out a function call and send it to a game object, and that game object will call that within a script that the game object has. So you can kind of let a game object know that it needs to do something. The nice thing with that is you can also have multiple game objects participate in that. So you can have one thing send out a function call, say, call your reduce hit points by 5 function, and give it to 10 different game objects, and all of them will call that function within that. So it's a interesting way of sending a message kind of game wide, or at least scene wide, that kind of stuff. But let's keep it simple for this guy. So we're going to go in here and we're going to give ourselves a public variable. We'll make it a Boolean. Did it hear me? Apparently it thinks it's a decent idea. So public Boolean is player. It'll be defaulted to false. I think if we didn't even put false on there, it'll just be off. But we'll default it to false. I'll just save that so we can go and see that appear now over in Unity. So I'm going to go back to my actual fight scene. All right, so now here's our player. Our player has a hit point bar. Here's the actual thing that thing is stuck to. And notice we now have this checkbox for is player. So for the player one, I'll go ahead and check that. The monster also has the same thing now that came with his prefab. And we're going to leave that unchecked. He's not the player. Okay. Now, who is governing the fight? Fight scene manager. We have our player, we have our monster. Okay, and let's look at our singleton here. See what we've put up there. That'll be inside of our objects. Called it core. All right, so we have access to the player up in our singleton right now, although for our player, we've hard-coded this in there because we no longer have the benefit of our first scene when the player used to be created. So now the player just exists here. We're also going to want to have the ability to set the monster once we get the monster. That way, this guy has access to our instance of player and our instance of monster. So we'll go ahead and say public static monster, the monster. We're not going to give that guy a value here because that's going to be a value he's going to get set with from our script for that guy. All right, so we just added to our singleton one additional thing we're going to remember called the monster. So now let's go to that script, fight scene manager. So here's our fight scene manager. This is our mono behavior that is dealing with our game, dealing with the fight. So here in start is where we set the value for the monster, and this becomes a local variable. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this as a local variable. And kind of the strategy for this is we don't need to keep track of the monster in multiple places, right? So we've decided we need to have access to the monster from multiple parts in our multiple game objects, multiple scripts, things like that. So it probably makes sense to take the monster out of a local variable in our fight scene manager and move it up to our singleton so that whoever needs to have access to it can have access to it. This goes back to that argument of which is, and give me a second here. I just want to make sure that I'm not muted before I go any farther. I did start the recording. Okay. Sorry, it was just in my head. So this goes back to that decision when we first introduced singletons. And we talked about, well, singletons are easy to abuse because we can just throw everything under the sink, up there because it's so trivial to use them. When we just added one line. Now all of a sudden the whole program can access our monster. So we want to be careful about what we put up there, but Unity adds a kind of another layer of complexity with this in that we're often moving between scenes in our game, we're also dealing with lots of different game objects that might all be, or many of them, interested in kind of the same information. So with Unity, we might decide that our singletons need to be are going to be more verbose. We're going to have more stuff up there. So we might even decide at some point to actually have multiple singletons, like a singleton that's kind of in charge of sharing information about a certain topic, and another one that's sharing information about another topic. So we don't just have this giant thing of shared information that all these wires are hooked up to. But for right now, our singleton is small enough that we're okay. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the monster from here. So we no longer have a local variable for our monster here. That's going to then reveal all the places we're using it. So as we go down here, we see all our little squiggles. All right. So any place where we say this dot the monster, we can replace that with core dot the monster, right? So I'm sure I can do aside this dot the monster, replace with core dot the monster. Place else. Looks like that is the place where it was happening. Okay, so that's kind of, I don't know, a little mini hack for finding your variables when you're using create errors, and that'll just give you the yellow brick road or where those things are. So now we've updated the this dot monster to core dot monster and all the places we were currently using it in here. So we now have access to our monster. Now remember, monsters and players are both inhabitants. So it is their inhabitantness that gives us access to their current hit points and their maximum hit points. And we see that these guys are protected, which means they're accessible within inhabitant as well as within player and monster. So children of inhabitant. So if you want a quick reminder, here's player. We see player inhabit or extends, inherits from inhabitant. We see monster does the same thing. So these guys have access to that. And we see that we got a get current hit points here in monster. Do we have the same thing in player? We got get current room. Okay, so let's talk about updating these guys a little bit. As we're getting ready to go into our fight, is it just the monster that we need to have access to their current hit points? We need all inhabitants. It would be nice if all inhabitants gave us access to their current hit points as well as their name. So that tells us that these couple of functions that we have here really don't belong inside of monster. They belong one level up inside of inhabitant, which will then spill through to monster, right? So both players and monsters should have the ability to get the current hit points, should have the ability to get the name, probably most of the other things as well. So we're going to go ahead and move this. We probably put this in here when we were first messing with monsters, something like that. And it might have happened before we extended inhabitant. Extends is that Java version of it. So you're going to hear me say that often, but extends is the same thing as the little colon here for how we do inheritance. Oh, and we see that nobody's calling these currently, apparently. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those from there. So monster becomes very boring. We'll go into inhabitant. Inhabitant already has a get name. It already has an is dead, take damage. So here, I'm actually just going to rewrite it in here. Let's get current hit points. Maybe I'm not doing the rewriting. Get maximum hit points. Let's see what else it thinks we want. All right, yeah, we don't need to set it right now because we're going to have the ability to take damage, which does modify it. What else do we have access to? Current hit points, max hit points, armor class, and name. Do we have a get AC? We do. Okay, so we have getters for all of our things at the inhabitant level, which means that anything that is a inhabitant So in object-oriented programming, we have this thing called an is-a relationship. We probably have it in the notes somewhere, but I'm gonna just throw it in here again. It's something you might see where when you go and search for stuff. So is maybe I'll throw a little hyphen in there. Okay. This is, let's see, when an object is an instance of a specific class, we say that whatever that instance is a whatever that class name is. More vocabulary thing. This is nothing new information. Just when you're looking at documentation for object-oriented programming, programs or programming, you might see something referred to an is-a relationship. That's what it means. That a variable is an instance of a specific class. All right. So now players and monsters have the ability to get all those things. Right now, we're going to go ahead and just leave the current room, set current room stuff at the player level because that's the only thing we've done. But at some point, we're probably going to have our monsters wandering the thing, or we might decide to have our monsters wandering the thing where we might need to move the ability of knowing the current room up a level so that all inhabitants can know that. All right. But let's keep it focused on just what we're doing between the fight between the monster and the player. All right. So our HB bar controller, this guy is going to show a we want the hit points to show a amount relative to its maximum hit points. So everything is going to kind of be a percentage. Right now, we are decrementing by a scale. So we really need to do the math problem of this, where a player and a monster don't necessarily have the same points. Let me just give ourselves a sample value to work with here. So if I go to Fight Scene Manager, when this thing first starts, we already have access. So right here is where we're setting our monster. So after this point, the monster and the player exist. Let's just go ahead and print out their current hit points so we see what we're dealing with and we can mess with some math around that. We could also throw some text associated with our hit point bar that shows the current hit points if that would be beneficial to us as well. But let's just see it output here. So we're going to say print player get max HP. And we'll do monster max HP. All right, so we'll see what those values are. Let's just see kind of the kind of values we're dealing with here. So we'll go ahead and run our game. I'll go to console. We need to stop our game because we're printing out all of our attacks. So we see at the very top here, player max hit points in this case was 34. Monster max hit points was 44. So we need to show in our bar, the bar needs to have the ability to represent a percentage of lost health. Right now, our bar, let's go back to project. Scripts. All right, so in our bar controller, I also want to bring the prefab back up because we're going to be messing with some stuff in there. All right, so the red, that size is relative to our current hit points. The green is just the backdrop for that. And right now we have our HP bar set at a scale of 1 on the X. And the backdrop is a scale of 10. But since the HP bar is a child of that, we only need to adjust the HP bar's scale in order to represent the percentage. Okay. Now, we can change this. So if it was at 50% health, we would say a 0.5 and then have it moved over. We're already doing that. So we can calculate our percentage as a number of hit points relative to their maximum hit points, set the scale of this guy to the correct thing, shift it over by the correct amount. All right. So let's start with that. We'll go back into our studio or our HP bar controller because this is the guy that's going to have to do this. We'll know inside of here whether we're the player or not. Now, this guy probably should have access to the inhabitant he's working with. So we can actually go ahead and give him access to it right here. So we'll say private inhabitant, the inhabitant. We'll ask the question if this dot is player. So if we're dealing with the player here, we'll set the inhabitant to the player from our singleton. Otherwise, we'll set the inhabitant to our monster from our singleton. So from this point forward, after this hit point bar shows up, we now have a local variable inside of our controller for our hit point bar called the inhabitant that is attached to the correct thing, the correct object. We no longer need to worry about who it was in terms of showing the correct hit points. And we also just added the ability for all inhabitants to have the ability to get us some different pieces of information. All right, so we can go ahead and get our maximum hit points, our current hit points, things like that. All right, so inside of my HP bar thing, inside of update, right now we have it happening every half second. We no longer need it to happen over every so often like this. We now want it to just update to whatever the current number of hit points are, right? So we can go ahead and dump that. We'll write the updated code above it for right now. All right, so we need to calculate what is the percentage, what is the scale of our hit point bar need to be. All right, so we can go ahead and say, let's see, I think they are dealing with floats. So we'll say HP percentage is the inhabitant dot. I think this guy is called get current HP. Copilot screwed up. Idiots. All right. So we'll get the HP percentage. That's going to be whoever the inhabitant is, their current hit points divided by the maximum hit points for them. That's going to give us a hit point percentage. We then want to go ahead and set the scale of, now remember, the game object that this script is attached to, we go back in here, is the actual HP bar, the red thing. All right, so that script is attached to that red thing, which means that this .game object is that red thing. So we want to go ahead and set his scale to the percentage relative to their current hit points. So we'll go ahead and say this .game object .transform .local scale equals new vector 3 HP percentage. I actually think we can change just the does it already have that? That's a 0.7 and a 2 for scale. I know we already have the current scale in there. This is our scale change. We'll no longer actually need a scale change because now we're changing based on actual math. So we'll go ahead and dump that. We also don't need time change because we're doing this every single frame. We're going to have the hit point bar represent whatever percentage of hit points they have. And the reason for that, I think I mentioned it last time, or maybe 2 times ago, and it's part of your homework for Wednesday, is we're going to be building this out to be turn-based, where whenever it's the player's turn, they get to decide what they want to do. Do they want to do a normal attack? Do they want to do a super duper powerful attack at the cost of being less accurate? So I think in the homework I have it set where it potentially does 50% more damage, but has a 25% less chance of hitting. So you can decide if you want to risk taking, really winding up for one. And then the third option would be heal. So you can take like a health potion. So the idea is you might be able to survive with a little human intelligence put in, that type of stuff. All right. So every single frame, we want to make the health bar represent their current number of hit points, which sometimes might go up. Right. So we do need to ask the question every single time, but we're no longer needing to remember how much time has passed. Similarly, right now we have this idea of a left move. The left move is going to be something that's going to be relative to the amount we're updating the hit points. All right. So we really can't work with this right now because the left move is going to be relative to the scale we've changed. So we don't need that anymore. All right. I'll leave that comment in there. So inside of update, we get our HP percentage, which is the inhabitant. This is representing current hit points divided by their maximum hit points, whatever their current hit points are, which could fluctuate up and down based on getting hit and based on drinking healing potions. Okay, we want to then update our local scale to be the hit point percentage from that, but I don't think we need to do a whole vector 3 there. I think we can just say local scale dot x is equal to HP percentage, but does it not let me set it? Yeah, it's a read only thing. So it only has a getter, not a setter. So we will need to give it an entire thing here. So we'll say new vector 3. Now we know it's going to be hit point percentage. We don't know that the other scales are 1 and 1. So we need to go ahead and update that to be this dot transform dot local scale dot y. And actually, the way I've been writing it is I've been throwing game object in there. I think I mentioned a couple of classes ago that because transforms are kind of this core component of everything in Unity, they make it very easy in the scripts to get at the transform of the game object that owns the script. But here I'm being explicit. I'm saying this, which is this instance of the script, give me the game object who has this hanging off of him. Then give me that guy's transform, even though we could have actually skipped putting game object in here and we can get right to the transform. Then get that guy's local scale. Then get his Y. Whatever it currently is. So we're just basically copying the Y over to this new thing. Similarly, we'll get the Z. All right, so I know it seems a little drawn out here. In fact, actually, I think we can kick it down a line like this and like this. That might be a little easier to read. So our vector 3 The X is going to be whatever the hit point percentage is right now. So it'll be point something up to a 1. The Y is whatever it used to be. The Z is whatever it used to be. Those are hard-coded values. All right, so we'll update that local scale. We no longer need to work with time change. We no longer are going to be messing with this thing here. In fact, I'm just going to delete this whole thing. So let's go in now and watch the fight unfold. We're not shifting it left, so we're only going to see it move in the middle, right? But let's see if we see it kind of going, they shouldn't be equal anymore because now they're operating off the actual hit points of the inhabitant that these guys are attached to. And we already know we have this fight unfolding under the hood. So we should see the hit points moving and we should be able to see who's about to win or something like that. So we'll go back in here, go back to my scenes. Back to our fight scene. Save that guy. All right, we'll fix well, let's see. Hold on. We need to. So here's the hit point bar associated with our monster. Why did it drop all the way down? Oh, because it is all the way down. That's why it dropped all the way down. So I'll hover that guy up above. Do the same thing for player. All that close enough. Go ahead and run this. Oh, hold on. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. Okay, so right off the bat, what does that error mean? Before we go and start investigating, when it says object reference not set to an instance of an object, what kind of thing do you think we're looking for from a debugging skill set? Got nothing? Well, somebody just died. When it says we're basically looking for, this is the equivalent in Java to a null pointer exception. Some object that we're trying to call a method on doesn't exist. We didn't set some value. All right, so object reference not set to an instance of an object. This would occur when we try to call a function on something that doesn't exist. So let's go see who he's complaining about. I'll go ahead and stop this. Hopefully it's something related to the player because the player really looked like they got their bell rung initially there, and I don't think we hit that hard. All right, so null reference exception. HP controller line 26. That's this guy right here. So it's saying the inhabitant current hit points, the inhabitant get max hit points. Realistically, it's the inhabitant that's not set here. Since we're dealing with the same guy, this is the line that's the problem. We're dealing with the inhabitant on both of those. So for whatever reason, we have to investigate. We're trying to get the current hit points or maximum hit points on nothingness. All right. Now, where does that inhabitant get set? It gets set inside of start here. Now, from our understanding, start gets called before anything else gets called. We're checking against the value for isPlayer. Now, isPlayer is set up as false by default. So that would mean that when we get to this if statement here, it would not be the player. Instead, it would get into this else where we would set the inhabitant to core.themonster. Go ahead. That's what we did out here in Unity. We made that, just so you see here, this guy's public, which means it's exposed to Unity. And when we go in here, we see that for our HP bar associated with the player, we hit that checkbox right here, letting it know that that should now be true. Over here where I'm moving my mouse, circling it. Do you see my mouse on there? Yeah. So over there on the right. So yeah, whether or not this thing is set is based on that checkbox. Just like for our monster, that checkbox is unchecked. It's not the player. All right. So we're operating off of that. Now, where does that inhabitant get set? So errors like this, probably in Unity, when you run into this stuff, has to do with the timing of when different variables come into existence. Okay, because remember, as our scene starts, we have all these different game objects that are spinning up, right? And we don't have control over which game object has their scripts called first. Where is our monster come into existence? It comes into existence inside of our fight scene manager. This guy, inside of his start, right there. So if we want to put this into what's actually happening, let's go back out to Unity so we're not staring at it in code. All of these are individual game objects over here on the left. Our fight scene manager is the guy that has that fight scene script associated with it. That's the guy that brings the monster into existence and sets the our singleton's value for monster to that. Our player and our monster both have these HP bars that spin up. We have if statements inside of here that makes the determination of are you the monster or are you the player? But which is happening first? The fact that we're getting a null pointer exception means that the very first call to update on our HP bars, on at least one of our HP bars, that very first call is happening before our fight scene manager has had the opportunity to bring the player into existence or the monster into existence. This guy. So we're not getting the line 26 inside of here prior to our HP bar controller trying to grab information about the hit points and the maximum hit points. So we need to fix that. Okay, so we understand the issue. This is effectively a race condition. This is back to our world of threads, right? We got two different things going on, two different threads running, and they are reliant on each other. Our second thread, this HP guy, he can't do what he needs to do until a monster exists. So what are some of our options? Well, the quick and dirty solution would be move the monster up to our singleton as well, right? So let's just do that and see it work. And then we're going to come back and look at a potentially alternative solution. That's pretty common in game programming, I guess. Really, actually, any event-driven programming. So I'm going to go here into my... Oh, here we go. So no longer am I going to set this here. So that game object's no longer going to be in charge of creating our monster. Instead, our monster will live in core, where we're already storing him, but now we'll actually give him a value. All right. Core exists right from the get-go. So we know right from the beginning, we have a player now and we have a monster now. So we should not have a problem with this guy trying to access nothingness. So let's save that, make sure the problem goes away, and then we'll look at an alternative. All right. So we don't see the things over here taking place. We've also lost our red. So we certainly have an issue with how we're handling scale, right? That seems clear, but our other problem went away. All right. So our other problem went away. So let's go and look at how we're handling scale right now. Well, actually, before I do that, I don't want to lose my train of thought related to an alternative way of fixing this. So I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to go into our fight scene manager. And I'll put the monster back in there. So we should have just reintroduced our error, or at least potentially reintroduced it, because again, this is a race condition. We don't necessarily know how Unity is scheduling when those things spin up. But I suspect we're going to have our error again. So let's make sure. Go ahead and run this. All right. And we do. Okay. So what's a way we can fix this? What we want to do is we want to look at, now that is an impressive number of tabs, right? Or all right. So what we want to do is we want to look at Unity, something called late update. So late update gets called after every other game object in the scene's update function has been called. And every other update function doesn't get called until after their respective start functions get called when that script comes into existence. So we could handle this by just changing our hit point bar to operate off of late update instead of normal update. So let's put that into the code, see it work, and we'll talk through that a little bit. So we'll go into our HP bar controller. We're going to make this guy late update. Right? So this will happen after all other updates have already occurred, which means that our monster should have already been created by the time we go and do this. Let's make sure that fixed our problem. Go ahead and run this. Ruh-roh. Ruh-roh. All right. Same issue. Is the same issue. That's our inhabitant. That gets set here. It's coming off the monster. Let's make sure late update does what I think it does. Late update is called every frame if the behavior is enabled. It's called after all update functions. This is useful to order script execution. Yeah, this is what this guy should have done. Did I save it? I've been known not to save things. That looks saved. Everything else looks saved. Our monster comes into existence right there inside of start for our fight scene manager, who has an update function. So this update function would not get called until after his start has completed. So we know the monster exists by the time we get to this update. Our late update function, this guy, is advertised as not getting called until after all other objects updates have been called. So I'm going to go in here real quick, and I'm just going to do a print core dot the monster. Let's just see what that guy looks like. See if it's a game object to make sure that that's the thing that's not getting set. Because as we have this written, it seems like the way late update is advertised as working should be fixing our problem here. Okay, so let me stop that. Object not set to an instance. All right, let's get up to monster here. Well, when I went to print out the monster, it's printing out an object. HP bar controller, line 27. That should be the same line. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. So it's complaining about this dot inhabitant. Let me print out this dot inhabitant here. So monster appears like it's set to something. So now we'll print out this dot inhabitant to see if he's set to something. And just since we have so much crap printing out to the screen, let's just let this be a null pointer exception if we can't get his name. So on line 26, if we get that equivalent to the null pointer exception again, that means that this guy is not set, which means that this is not happening ahead of time for whatever reason. Perhaps the way we're setting our Booleans is not the, maybe Boolean was a poor choice. So we'll find out here. So let's go back here, run this. We expect to get a null pointer exception on line 26 now. And we do. All right, so that guy definitely is not set. So the inhabitant does not get this guy is not set. So now we want to go in and see, well, what's happening with this dot is player. I wonder if it is because I've hard coded its value. We just try it again with that. Because this is how Unity handles MVC by making it public. We're exposing it to this thing, which suggests that we're reliant on this setting the value. Maybe giving it a default value is kind of breaking how their MVC is working. That does not appear to be the case. So let's print out the value of is player. So we'll do a print. I'm going to put a bunch of asterisks here to make sure we can kind of find it. And we're going to do this dot is player. All right, so we should see, we're hoping we see a true for one of those and a false for the other one, if it's getting set the right way. Kind of following the yellow brick road here. Stop this. It's going real quick there. All right, so we have a false and we have a true. They seem to be set to the correct values. Make sure we're getting in here. There is a way to run this through the debugger, but I don't want to have to go into that today. So we're going to say print, set the player. Set the monster. Make sure we see those two things that we're getting into. We should be getting into each of those if statements. So let's make sure we're getting in there. Roll up. We got the set the monster. We got set the player. Okay, we're getting in there. Following the yellow brick road. So right after this, our inhabitant should be set. So if we tack onto this dot, the inhabitant dot get name, that should have a value. Oh, did I not put it back? If I didn't do that, that means I did it on purpose and I was testing you. Well, oh, wait. No, we're still good. We're still good because we put it into our fight controller and then made the other thing late update. Yeah, so we're still operating off of late update, working as it says it should work. And our fight scene manager does build our monster right here. So I think we're still good. Well, not good, but all right. And I see we're done. So let me just test this real quick. We'll leave it at this point here. There is an assignment up for you, not related to this, for you to add in the ability for those things to stop. You already know how to respond to key presses, so you can do it like a press 1 to do a normal attack, press 2 to do a super attack, press 3 to give you some health back. And for now, you can turn your HP bars off if yours aren't functioning until we get this guy going. Let me just get to our last error here, but we're done. And your homework isn't related to the HP bars. We get a mic there. All right, so it is the monster that it's not working with. We got set the player mic, but then for the monster is where we get our error. So I'm just going to do that. All right. So let's leave it at that. We'll pick up. We'll figure out why our monster isn't getting set. Late update works this way. So guess I'm confused. I'm as interested as you are, maybe. All right. So I'm going to leave it like that. I'm actually going to purposely not push my code right now. That way, the version for the homework assignment, I gave you a starting point. You have the version that still runs. The old one, the HP bar doesn't represent their hit points. All right. Questions, comments, concerns, bribes. I'll see everybody on Wednesday. Who wouldn't? Do you get it? Do you know what it is? It is Moses parting the Red Sea.
Did you make that yourself?
Yeah. I think, does the back say something different?
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
You had dinner, is it?
Yeah.
How long did it take?